Okay, Romans chapter 15. We're going to try to go through this whole chapter real quickly. Romans 15. In this chapter, Paul uses 6 Old Testament references, and every one of them refers to the Israelites being part of the covenant of grace. And knowing the context of the whole book, Paul is writing to the Romans, and he is telling this congregation of Christians at Rome that was made up of both houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Not the old idea of Jews and Gentiles, as we all know. But he's come down to the very end of this letter, or almost to the end of this letter. And he is accentuating, he's enforcing the truth that God chose a people, and that these two houses that were once separated have come back together under Christ. Under Christ. I want to emphasize that. By the work of the cross, the new covenant has already been instituted, it's already been ratified, it's already in effect, and both houses are already joined back together. Romans 15. I have entitled this chapter Edification. Edification of others and not ourselves. Verse 1. We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. He automatically, in verse 1, creates a dichotomy between the weak and the strong. Now, this possibly could be applied different ways. But was he talking about one group in the church at Rome, possibly the group from the house of Judah that had been schooled in a lot of the things that the house of Israel people didn't know anything about? So he is telling those that are strong, if you consider yourself strong in the Lord, you ought to bear the weaknesses. The King James says infirmity. Understand the weaknesses of someone else. Now, I'm not going to ask for hands and say, okay, who's strong? Who considers yourself strong? But if you consider yourself mature, consider the other person that is on the step below you. And don't please yourself. Our biggest problem is not someone else. It's the person that combs our own hair. It's the person we see in the mirror. So Paul is telling these people that are strong, okay, you Roman congregation, whoever considers yourself strong out there, I want you to understand and bear the infirmities or the weaknesses, or the weaknesses of those that are weak. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. You notice the last two words are the qualifying principle of that verse. It doesn't say, let every one of us please his neighbor. You see what I'm saying? We are not doormats. We are not rubber stamps. It says, let every one of us please his neighbor for his good. Only that which serves for his benefit and edification. For even Christ pleased not himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of them that reproached thee fell on me. Psalm 69:9. That's the first Old Testament reference. And he uses Christ as our example. 69:9 of the book of Psalm. Now, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning. That's the Old Testament that he's referring to. That we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. We find hope in these Scriptures and in the experiences of those that have gone before. Then he says, now the God of patience, consolation, grant you to be like-minded one toward another according to Christ Jesus. Now the God of patience. Lord, give me patience, and I want them right now. This word patience can also be endurance, steadfastness, and consolation. Grant you to be like-minded like Christ was, that he referred to in verse number 3. And be that one toward another. Is this talking to anybody? That ye may be with one mind and one mouth, glorify God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, if he was talking to these two different classes of people in this church at Rome, he's telling them, I want you to say the same thing. One mouth, he says. That ye may be of one mind and one mouth to glorify God. Don't be saying contradictory things. Well, let's turn to Ephesians chapter 4. Verse number 1. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. We are to walk with lowliness, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another in love, and endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Really, that needs no commentary. Keep the peace. Keep the peace. In verses 8 through 12, I think Paul gives a perfect example of the two houses coming together. Now I say that Jesus Christ was a minister of the circumcision. Well, the circumcision was the house of Judah. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. For the truth of God. And what is the truth of God in this verse? Jesus came to confirm the promises made unto the fathers. So the truth of God is the faithfulness of God in fulfillment of His Old Testament promises fulfilled in Christ. Now I say that Jesus Christ was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of God, to confirm the promises made unto the fathers, and that the nations, King James uses the word Gentiles, but we know who the Gentiles were, and that the nations might glorify God for His mercy, as it is written in Psalm 18:49, "For this cause I will confess to thee among the nations, and sing unto thy name." And again He saith, "Rejoice, ye nations, with His people." Another Old Testament. Deuteronomy 32:43. And again, "Praise the Lord, all ye nations, and laud Him, all ye people." Psalm 117:1. And again, Isaiah said, "There shall be a root of Jesse, and he that shall rise to reign over the nations. In him shall the Gentiles of the nations trust." Isaiah 11:10. Let's turn to Isaiah 11:10. "In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for the ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles or the nations seek, and his rest shall be glorious." Paul applies that to the work of Jesus Christ. Verse 13 and 14. Paul expresses a confidence in the believers in Rome. Now, at this point, as far as we know, Paul had never been to Rome at this point of the writing of this chapter, of this book. "Now the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that ye may abound in hope through the power of the Holy Ghost. And I myself also am persuaded of you, my brethren, that ye also are full of goodness, filled with knowledge, able also to admonish one another." So here again, he picks up the theme that he started with in verse number 1, that you admonish one another. "No man liveth, and no man dieth to himself." Whatever you do, you're going to affect somebody. Good or bad. Your life is touching somebody. I'm going to read that again. "That I should be the minister of Jesus Christ to the nations, to the Gentiles, ministering the gospel." I'm at the wrong verse. "That I myself also am persuaded of you, my brethren, that ye also are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, able also to admonish one another." He is relying upon their maturity. He's not there, but he is saying, you are mature, admonish one another in Christ. I think it's the obligation of every believer, not just the pastor or someone that holds an office, to admonish other believers. Because the body of Christ is compared to the human body, a hand, an arm, a foot, a leg, head, shoulders. We function together. Nevertheless, verse 15, brethren, I have written the more boldly unto you in some sort, as putting you in mind because of the grace that is given to me of God. Paul realized that he had been given a special grace. And that grace was to bring the gospel to us. That grace was to bring the gospel to the nations. That I should be, at the end of verse 15 is a comma. The thought is continued in verse 16. So I'm going to read it without hesitation. Nevertheless, brethren, I have written the more boldly unto you in the same sort, as putting you in mind because of the grace that is given to me of God, that I should be the minister of Jesus Christ to the Gentiles. That was His special grace. Ministering the gospel of God, that the offering up of the Gentiles or the nations might be acceptable, being sanctified by the Holy Ghost. I do not understand. I cannot get it through my head that Bible historians, Bible scholars that have the alphabet behind their name cannot understand that Paul had a mission to the house of Israel to bring Israel into the covenant grace of Jesus Christ. Blind, deaf, and dumb. It wasn't the nations per se. Quote this general misunderstood word, Gentiles, everybody out there. He was to bring the gospel to the house of Israel, and he did. Amen. Now, verse number 17. I have therefore, whereof I may glory through Jesus Christ in those things which pertain to God. Now, then there's this phrase in verse number 18 that's worded somewhat strange. For I will not dare to speak of any of those things which Christ hath not wrought in me. What he is saying, I will not dare to speak of any of those things if they were not true, which Christ hath not wrought in me. If these things were not wrought in me, I dare not speak of them. But Christ did bring these things to pass in me. So I do speak of them. And what are those things? To make the nations obedient by word and deed. And then he says, what Paul is saying is that he is glorying in the fact that special grace was given to him to be the instrument to bring the two houses back together. And he understood the work of the cross. He understood the old covenant and the new covenant. And the old one is gone, and the new one, brought in by a new mediator, Jesus Christ. And he is saying, I'm the man to take this message to the house of Israel. And he says, if it were not true, I dare not talk about it. Now, was he boasting? I think he was a humble man. But he saw this as a fulfillment of the plan and the purpose of God. He quoted these verses, Deuteronomy, Psalm, Isaiah, referring to the nations of Israel. Now, verse 17. Verse 19. Through many signs and wonders, by the power of the Spirit of God, so that from Jerusalem and round about unto Illyricum I have fully preached the gospel of Christ. Steve, can you put the screen down for me? Appreciate it. Where is Illyricum? Illyricum, whoops, thought there was another button on this thing. You see this area? Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, all this area, even Bulgaria, Macedonia, which is northern Greece. Paul preached in this area. He didn't go way over here to the east. The Holy Ghost forbid him to do that in Acts chapter 16. He went this way. So Jerusalem is down here. Rome is over here. And he's telling the Roman Christians, he said, I took the gospel to the nations. Now, doing research on this Illyricum, it was pronounced or spelt different ways, Illyrium, several different ways, but it was inhabited by people of Italic, Celtic, Traco, which are the same thing, Hellenic, which are Greek, and Illyric descent. Now, I was reading a book yesterday, of which I've read this many times before in other books, that these people were mainly, not are, but were mainly Celtic. Because they came out of this area, Austria, Germany, etc., France, etc., way up in here, and they migrated down here in the 3rd century BC. In fact, I even made a track, who were the Galatians? Well, we could make another one on who was the Illyricum people. They were Celtic. And the word Gaelic, Galatia, are related. And they mean the same people. They were Celtic people that lived in this part of the world. That's north of Greece, that's southern Europe. Paul knew where he was going. He knew who he was talking to, and he refers to the Gentiles, etc., in several times in this chapter. So he knew that these people were of the house of Israel. Why doesn't Dr. So-and-so know it? You know, just a simple research in a library, in a encyclopedia, will tell you that these people were Celtics. Well, that's what you is.
Yeah.
So who was he preaching to? He was preaching to our people. This truth is so revolutionary, that it would set our people free if we would just simply know it and believe it.
Amen.
But we have been so propagandized. Our minds have been so internationalized and multiculturalized and everything else that we really don't know the plan and the purpose of God in this book. Thank you very much. But Paul said, I have fully preached the gospel in Illyricum. We could not pass over this verse without doing a little research and find out where this place was located. And there's more than one scholar. I picked up a book yesterday, one that I'd been looking at for 16 years, you know. One of these books that just keeps going by you and say, I got to read that someday. Well, I picked it up and read it. And it said the same thing. These people were Celts. Yea, so have I strived to preach the gospel, not where Christ was named, lest I should build upon another man's foundation. In other words, Paul is saying, I was the first preacher of the gospel in Illyricum. I was the first one. Because I'm not going there as preacher number 2 or number 10, building on another man's foundation. I built the foundation, he said. Folks, Paul's our man. Paul's our man. He's our pastor. Paul is our pastor. He brought us the gospel.
Yes, he did.
As it is written, to whom he was not spoken of, they shall see. And they that have not heard shall understand. This is Isaiah 52:15. 52:15 of Isaiah. (52:15). Talking about the coming of the Messiah. So shall he sprinkle many nations. I looked up this word sprinkle, and it was translated in this place, startle. That's kind of good.
Yes.
We need to be startled. He shall startle many nations. The kings shall shut their mouths at him. For that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider. In other words, the house of Israel, see, at this point Isaiah was talking about the house of Judah. But these people over here that had been put away They have not seen, they have not heard. They're the ones that's going to see and hear. And everybody said, that's me.
Yes.
That's me.
Yes. Yes.
Now all hell is breaking loose in our nation. The heathen are raging. And they're coming up with all kinds of excuses for their rage. But I tell you what they hate. They hate theocracy. They hate Bible law. And they hate covenant. They can't stand covenant. You know why? That's election. Oh no, we're all equal. And I'm Hopalong Cassidy. God has an elect people. Satan knows it, and Esau knows it. Now these goons in the street, they may not realize it. But Esau knows what he's fighting for. Fighting for his birthright back. But he's not going to get it. Verse 22. For which cause also I have been much hindered from coming to you. But now having no more place in these parts, in other words, I've preached the gospel here, wherever he was writing from. I've done my work here. I have no more place in these parts, and having a great desire these many years to come to you, whensoever I take my journey into Spain. He desired to go to Spain. Spain and Portugal are the furthest western landmass of Europe. And you go on around Spain and Portugal, and you're headed right into France. Paul traveled. I believe he made it to Spain. I believe he made it to France. I believe he made it to County Kent, southeast England. I think he made it to London. He had a desire to preach the gospel to the Israelites. This was God's man for the hour. You talking about the God's man of faith and power? It's Paul. For whensoever I take my journey into Spain or Iberia, I will come to you, for I trust to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you, if first I be somewhat filled with your company. In other words, your company will give me encouragement to go on. But now I go to Jerusalem to minister to the saints. Now, from verses 25 through 29, Paul's charitable ministry to the Jerusalem saints. He must have collected money because Judea, as we all know, was in a drought and in a famine. And he was collecting money for the saints at Jerusalem. Now I go to Jerusalem to minister unto the saints. For it hath pleased them of Macedonia, northern Greece, and Achaia, Greece, to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. You notice the church was taking care of its own. Everybody get that? The church was taking care of its own. and I've yet to find where they were taking care of the masses on the outside.
Amen.
That concept has made a lot of people just nothing but lazy bums. It hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the nations had been partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. When therefore I have performed this, and have sealed to them this fruit, I will come by you into Spain. Now, the Bible never indicates that he made it to Spain, that I know of. But he had a desire to go both to Rome and to Spain. It's the second time he's mentioned it. And I am sure that when I come unto you, I shall come in the fullness of the blessing of the gospel of Christ. Now I beseech you, brethren, for the Lord Jesus Christ's sake, and for the love of the Spirit, that ye strive together with me in your prayer to God for me. Paul's request for the people to pray for him, that I may be delivered from them that do not believe in Judea. Who is he talking about? He earlier referred to those in Jerusalem that believed, the saints. But now he's referring to those that live in Judea that do not believe. Pharisees, Sadducees. John 7 says, and he dare not walk in Judea anymore for fear of the Jews. Now, there's a possibility. Paul had this desire to go to Rome and then to Spain. There is no indication, as to my knowledge, in the Bible that he made it to Spain, Rome and Spain, according to his desire. He did make it to Rome, we know that, but under different circumstances. But he is saying, first, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. And Lord, help me to be delivered from those people that want to kill me. I hope I can go in, give the offering to the saints in Jerusalem, and leave, and then head for Rome and Spain. And that my service, which I have for Jerusalem, may be accepted of the saints. That I may come unto you with joy by the will of God, and may with you be refreshed. He's referring again, my desire to see the saints at Rome. Now the God of peace be with you all. Amen. Now I believe that no doubt he made it to Rome. Not on that prison ship either. When we have these 2 Roman imprisonments, a span of about 4 years, that's when I believe he took that Roman ship, a commercial ship, out of Rome, and he stopped at Rome, up to Spain, and on to England. Because we know he made it to England. So therefore, common sense tells us that he stopped along the way at Rome, in Spain, and then on to Great Britain, or just Britain as it was called at that time. Paul's ministry, after reading the book of Romans and studying it to the extent that we have, I'm just more convinced than ever that of election, predestination, that God controls human history. And He designed in the ages past the plan that His people would play out, would perform. And He says, they're so far astray, they're so wicked and vile, I have to put them out of my sight. But the Redeemer brought us back. The last several days, something's been going over into my head concerning, I'm not going to go into it much now, the difference between the Abrahamic covenant and the new covenant, or we'll call the Abrahamic covenant and the Mosaic covenant. Big difference. A big difference. And the church world at large, of every race and every color, rejoices in something that they really don't understand. And their blessings have come through the covenant people. But now they think they're the covenant people. When the Lord told Abraham, your seed is going to bless all the families of the earth, that has happened. In more than one way, that has happened. But a blessing is different from a covenant. Totally different. A blessing is in the covenant, but a covenant is not necessarily in the blessing. You follow me? I'll end right there.